Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, the top 10 ways The Handmaid's Tale is way too real. The 2017 adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale didn't seem like the sort of thing that would take the media by storm. It's based on a novel from 1985 about a dystopian future where the few fertile women are raped to produce offspring for the elite. What is so interesting is this resonates so strongly 32 years later. What made The Handmaid's Tale more than just a prestige project was the way it connected with its audience. Even before the show premiered, groups of female protesters demonstrated against abortion-restricting bills in Texas by wearing the costumes of handmaids from the show, a move which seems both very modern given the popularity of cosplay and harkens back to how revolutionaries dressed as Native Americans during the infamous Boston Tea Party of 1773. What started as an act by less than a dozen women has grown to more than 700. The Handmaid's Tale has come by this resonance by clearly reflecting the times in which it was produced while also remaining sufficiently its own to be timeless. In the video today we're looking at 10 examples of how it does this, and if you haven't seen the show yet, there are going to be spoilers, so watch out. Number 10. Hostages made complicit in atrocities. In the pilot episode, we're shown that the handmaidens are forced to form circles around enemies of the state as part of a pseudo-religious ritual before performing communal executions with rocks. Considering that their status as rare, fertile women means that the handmaids are effectively prisoners of the same state, the intention is obviously to chip away at any sense of moral authority that the handmaidens may feel that they have in resisting. It's also a way to test their loyalty and give them a cathartic release that might otherwise be directed at the governing power. It also might make them less willing to cooperate with enemies of the state, as it would put the fear in the back of their minds that someday they might have to cast a stone to kill the person who they hoped was going to help them escape. Even while the show was in production, this evil technique was used by disparate terrorist groups. In May 2016, ARA News reported that while ISIS controlled the city of Mosul, they would take groups of people that they claimed were apostates and ask for volunteers to execute them. When no civilians were willing to take part, they were chosen at random from a crowd. Supposedly, the intention there was more to claim the civilians were acting on their own free will, to claim that ISIS had the religious civilian support of the population. But the effect was inevitably the same. This is hardly unique to ISIS either. In Uganda, the Lord's Resistance Army, led by Christian Joseph Kony, who you may remember from a viral video in 2012, used similar tactics by having abducted children and other hostages torture each other. It's really one of the most disturbing notions in the entire show. Number 9. Forced surrogacy. Late in the series, there's a scene showing the creation of the Gilead organization, which leads to the creation of the handmaid system. Commander Fred Waterford explains that the handmaids will be impregnated by members of the regime while their wives are holding them captive. This is essentially so that the fertile woman acts as a surrogate, giving the act more of a sense of ritual and thus legitimacy. In May 2017, Outlook India reported that similar actions happened with young women in Indian cities such as Delhi. Not only were locations that posed as homes for wayward youth offering them up for the highest bidder, but they made sure proper natal care was given, including injections to make sure their teen hostages gave birth to the healthiest babies possible. Forced surrogacy was the term the police gave for it, which gives you an idea of just how widespread the problem was. It goes to show that the will is definitely there to legitimize such a system whenever a Gilead-like power comes in. Number 8. Pollution lowering fertility rates. It wasn't until the 6th episode that any sort of explanation for why fertility rates plummeted so dramatically in the show's dystopian future was given. Even then, it's hardly from the most trustworthy source. Gilead says that it's attributable to a combination of rampant pollution and genetically modified food. In the former case, we can see that they aren't just spouting propaganda. The Stockholm Environment Institute found that every 3 million premature births are caused by air pollution, roughly 18% of them. BiomedJournal.com also reports that in both animals and humans, exposure to severe pollution doesn't just affect fertility, it increases the chances of miscarriage. Considering the United States' stated support for expanding the coal industry and the numerous repeals to the Environmental Protection Agency controls, it seems a safe bet that we're going to see some aspect of this play out in our near future. Number 7. Deadly forced labor. Defying Gilead in the show isn't just punishable by being stoned and potentially having your dead body hung from a wall. At all times, even the handmaids that are needed for the future of Gilead are under threat of being sent to the colonies. These are places so polluted that the protagonist Offred is told that for laborers, their skin comes off in sheets. Many forced laborers can relate to working in such poisonous conditions. In 1986, around the time that The Handmaid's Tale was published, it was reported by the Associate Press that in the 1970s there was a mine near the community of Payat Gorsk that used prisoners to mine for uranium without even even nominal radiation protection. Those who suffered various forms of radiation poisoning weren't so much treated as they were subjected to medical experimentation. In a much less severe case, but with more of a religious element, in 2017, the Seattle Times reported that drug addicts in Oklahoma that were supposedly in recovery were actually being taken by the organization Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery and being forced to work in unpaid chicken plants. Chicken plants, they are extremely unclean and hazardous places. Many suffered bacterial infections or even burned by acid. Number 6. Eye trauma punishment. In a portion of the story which is not present in the novel, the handmaid of Warren is punished for the crime of rebelling against the class of women that are assigned to keep the handmaids in line by having her right eye removed. The biblical warrant for doing so is the famous biblical verse, Matthew chapter 18, verse 9, "If thine eye offends thee, pluck it out." This does come across as a bit excessive in portraying the villainy of a culture that already was built on systematic crimes against humanity. Although it actually illustrates an often ignored part of systems which use physical abuse as discipline. It's not just back in societies like ancient Babylon where women could be punished by having their eyes removed for disobedience. Eye trauma is a fairly common occurrence anywhere that children will be beaten for disobedience, such as Ugandan student Subra Namunga. She lost an eye to corporal punishment after being struck in the face with a stick at primary school. A study published by the Journal of National Medical Association found that 24.5% of injuries serious enough to require medical treatment were inflicted by adults during corporal punishment. In Iran, people being sentenced to have their eyes removed through sharp implements or acid is well documented, and clearly the society in this show is meant to illustrate what would happen if the equivalent of Sharia law became dominant in America's not-too-distant future. Number 5. Attacks on abortion rights. During the indoctrination sequences that showed how the handmaids were supposedly converted from free citizens to surrogate wombs, one of the main topics of brainwashing sessions was to portray the fact that the women had the choice to terminate their pregnancies. It's naturally portrayed as going against his will, but also a particularly ironic waste considering the way infertility threatens the future of humanity. Whatever your personal perspective on the abortion controversy is, it's hard to keep the current situation out of your mind when watching these scenes in the show. Even before the 2016 election that swept into the highest office a person who said that women who got abortions should be punished, numerous states were passing laws that took the decision-making for the procedure out of the hands of women seeking the procedure themselves. In May 2016, Oklahoma State Congress passed a law making abortion punishable by 3 years in prison. The governor, however, vetoed it because she knew the Supreme Court would overturn it. After that failed in February of 2017, Oklahoma's House of Representatives passed a bill requiring the father's permission. On a national scale, the House of Representatives for the United States passed a ban on abortion after the 20th week. For the thousands of women who will seek out an abortion every year, and in many places will need to travel across multiple state lines to get to a clinic with a schedule opening, it might seem like only a matter of time before the Supreme Court has enough abortion opponents in it that laws begin passing which will take the right away from them entirely. Number 4. Lower class people pitted against each other. As early as the pilot episode, we hear Offred's vitriolic thoughts about her fellow handmaid Ovglen as they go on a shopping trip. Later in the episode, Offred is genuinely surprised to learn that Ovglen is no more pious than she is. Ovglen states that it's very intentional on the part of Gilead that the handmaids are made to distrust each other as much as they distrust their oppressors. That's been the story of how lower class people have been treated for much of American history. Even as the income gap between the wealthy and the poor grows, so that literally half the population has less wealth compared than the top few thousand, working class people are told that the real cause of their ills is other poor people. Whether the accusation is because those other poor people receive welfare, commit crime, or because they're lazy, it's an understandable catharsis. Many lower class people will never meet anyone in the upper castes, but they are likely to rub elbows with other poor people, making the lower class people more of a tangible target for their ire. Gilead is not mad to exploit that. Number 3. Women subjugating each other. As memorable as Commander Waterford is as a human face of Gilead in the show, few characters had the impact on audiences that Aunt Lydia did, who is played by Emmy winner Ann Dowd. It isn't just that she has a hard demeanor and becomes overtly cruel and abusive, it's the way she serves what's explicitly a patriarchal society what makes her hands the dirtiest. This is consistent with the fact that parts of the Holy Bible tell women to submit to their husbands, leading to Christian women being statistically less likely to seek help in an abusive relationship. Despite this, women are actually more religious than men in terms of both population and reverence. If it became real, an organization like the Aunts would have little trouble filling its ranks. Number 2. Indulgent hypocrisy among the top class. In the 8th episode, Offred accompanies Commander Waterford to a brothel. There she sees a completely different face of Gilead. She and the audience are shown clearly that what had previously seemed only a repressive and oppressive regime was completely hypocritical at the top, with the people in power seemingly deliberately indulging in the vices that they claim to despise. In Carolyn Jessup's 2007 autobiography Escape, she explains what finally made up her mind to leave her community with the Church of Latter-day Saints. She said this was learning about the hypocrisy that the richest and most powerful engaged in, such as having alcohol at their private parties, even though this was supposed to be banned by their doctrine. This was despite the fact that it was common knowledge that leader Warren Jeffs was demonstrably a child predator by virtue of the underage wives that he took. Also, among communities that live under Sharia law, the sight of religious overseers that will sneak off to smoke even though cigarettes are banned is quite common. Imams being told that armed insurgents should be given religious sanction to marry whoever they want temporarily is also widely known. More than anything else, religious fundamentalism guarantees a lot of blatant hypocrisy. Number 1. Forced dress codes. As mentioned earlier, one of the best-known aspects of The Handmaid's Tale is the bright red costumes that the handmaids are forced to wear. These are supposed to invoke puritanical clothing and act as an analogue to the women in Middle Eastern countries who are forced to wear burqas. The last time burqas and related dress codes were in the news was in September 2017, when President Trump reversed a campaign promise to increase the US military presence in Afghanistan by more than 5,000 troops. More than anything, the hook for the news was that General John Kelly supposedly persuaded the president in part by showing him photos from Afghanistan that featured women in the 1970s publicly wearing miniskirts. This was evidence that the nation used to be relatively liberated before the Taliban and other nominally religious oppressors gained control. The fact that Kabul, once purportedly the Paris of the Middle East, is now a place where religiously motivated attacks are so commonplace that in October 2017 alone, dozens of people were killed by 2 terrorist bombings, should send a clear message to the rest of the world. Whatever progress your nation has made, religion, any religion, can take control and strip away freedoms. Nowhere is free if the ranks of the people that want to put us under his eye. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, check out some of our videos from the archives over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.